Welcome to your deep dive on conquering regulatory nightmares.
Oh, regulatory nightmares.
Especially for those of you in the pharmaceutical world.
Yeah.
You shared some scenarios from Increasy as a company that helps navigate this tricky landscape.
Right.
And honestly, some of them made my palms sweat.
I bet.
Think FDA meetings surprise guidance updates.
Uh-huh.
The dreaded clinical hold email.
Yeah, it's a jungle out there, no doubt.
It is.
But as they say, knowledge is power,
Right,
right?
absolutely. So we're going to unpack these scenarios, but also look for those bigger picture patterns.
Okay.
What are the common fears?
Yeah.
And how can we, the listener included, turn that anxiety into an actual advantage?
I love that approach because fear can paralyze us,
Yeah.
but it can also be a powerful motivator if we channel it correctly.
Okay, so scenario one, picturing yourself in an FDA meeting.
Oh, boy.
They even call it high stakes, which already makes me want to hide.
Right.
But what really caught my eye was Increasy's advice on mock regulatory scenarios. It's like a dress rehearsal for your brain, right?
It's more than just rehearsal.
Nope.
It's strategic exposure therapy.
Oh.
Increasy points out that FDA meetings aren't just about knowing the data.
Yeah.
It's about conveying it with confidence.
Uh-huh.
Think about it. You're in the hot seat, the pressure's on, and suddenly you're hit with a curveball question.
Oh, I can feel my heart rate going up just thinking about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you've already war-gamed those scenarios, those tough questions,
Okay.
your brain doesn't go into panic mode.
Right.
You're prepared.
Yeah.
You're articulate. And that projects a sense of competence to the FDA reviewers.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So it's not just about being smart. It's about appearing in control, which builds trust.
Precisely. And trust is gold in the regulatory world.
Okay, so mock meetings, check.
Go.
But then there's scenario two, which I think will resonate with a lot of listeners.
Right.
Your boss wants an update on the latest CMC guidance changes. CMC being chemistry, manufacturing, and controls for anyone just joining us.
Right, the nitty-gritty of how your drug is actually made.
Right.
And the FDA guidance on this stuff is constantly evolving.
Seriously, who can keep up with all that? It feels like every week there's a new document to decipher.
This is where systems come in.
Okay.
And Chrissy's talks about curated alerts, summaries, even internal wikis dedicated to CMC updates.
Uh-huh.
I know it's not the most glamorous work.
Knowledge management isn't exactly a party, but it's crucial.
Exactly, because when your boss asks that question,
Yeah.
you don't want to be scrambling, right?
Right.
You want to be the person with their finger on the pulse, calmly providing the key takeaways.
Yeah.
That's how you establish yourself as an invaluable asset.
It's about staying ahead of the curve so you're not constantly playing catch up.
Right.
And that probably saves a lot of sleepless nights too.
Definitely.
Which unfortunately brings us to scenario three.
Okay.
The email subject line that makes your blood run cold. Pending clinical hold for CMC reasons. Ugh, even saying it is stressful.
I can practically hear the collective groan from our listeners right now.
Right. It's the ultimate fear for anyone developing a new drug.
Yeah.
Your entire project grinds to a halt because of a manufacturing glitch? Documentation error?
Who knows?
Right.
And this is where that prep work we talked about becomes critical.
Okay.
And Chrissy emphasizes the importance of a thorough response. Not just addressing the immediate concern, but demonstrating a comprehensive understanding of all potential CMC hold issues.
So you're not just reacting, you're anticipating their next question.
Yes.
It's almost like a preemptive strike against potential problems.
Exactly. And that level of preparedness sends a strong message to the FDA. We've got this, we're on top of it, and we're committed to getting it right.
Which hopefully gets your clinical trial back on track faster.
You would hope so.
Okay, shifting gears to scenario four. And this one hits a pain point I bet many listeners relate to.
All right.
Feeling stuck, struggling to get resources for regulatory work. It's always seen as a cost center, not a value driver.
Ah, the classic struggle.
Yeah.
And it's a problem because, as Chrissy points out,
Yeah.
it leads to a reactive firefighting approach to regulatory issues.
Right.
You're constantly putting out fires instead of building that robust infrastructure we talked about.
Right, because who has time for internal wikis and mock meetings when you're scrambling just to keep up with basic submissions?
Exactly. So how do we break out of this cycle?
Yeah.
And Chrissy suggests becoming a translator, bridging the gap between the regulatory world and the business world.
Okay, I love that analogy. Tell me more.
It's about reframing the conversation. Instead of just saying, we need more resources, you need to connect the dots for leadership.
Right.
Show them how CMC impacts timelines, which ultimately impacts the bottom line.
So instead of talking about document control systems and validation protocols,
Yeah.
which probably makes their eyes glaze over.
Right. You talk about how investing in those systems can actually save the company millions of dollars in the long run by avoiding costly delays and setbacks.
Now, that's a language they understand. It's about framing regulatory affairs as a strategic advantage, not a bureaucratic burden.
Precisely. And once leadership sees that connection, they're much more likely to invest in the resources you need to build a truly robust regulatory function.
And then you're not just surviving, you're thriving.
Exactly.
Okay, moving on to scenario 5. And this one is straight out of a regulatory horror movie.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
Picture this. You're days away from a major NDA or BLA submission.
Oh, boy.
That's a new drug application or biologics license application for those unfamiliar with the acronyms.
Right, the big kahuna.
Yeah.
The culmination of years of research and development.
Exactly. And suddenly you discover missing data.
Oh, no. Talk about a nightmare scenario.
Right. It's like the floor is collapsing beneath you.
Yeah.
So what does Increasy suggest in this high-pressure situation?
Well, first they emphasize the importance of process.
Okay.
Having robust systems in place from the very beginning can help prevent this kind of last-minute scramble.
So it's not just about what you do, it's about how you do it.
Exactly. Having clear documentation procedures.
Okay.
Well-defined roles and responsibilities. And regular data quality checks can go a long way toward preventing those heart-stopping moments.
It's like having a safety net for your data so it doesn't all come crashing down at the last minute.
Precisely. But Increasy also emphasizes the importance of aligning with FDA expectations from the start.
Okay.
Don't try to outsmart the system.
Right.
Give them exactly what they want, clearly and concisely.
So it's about anticipating their needs, understanding their perspective, almost like reading their minds. Which, speaking of anticipation, leads us to scenario 6, the pre-FDA meeting jitters.
Yeah.
I mean, who hasn't felt that wave of anxiety before facing those regulatory reviewers?
It's a natural response to a high-pressure situation.
Right.
But remember, the FDA is not your enemy.
Oh, I know, logically. But it's hard not to feel intimidated.
I get it. But Increasy reminds us that preparation is your best weapon against pre-meeting jitters. And they offer some very specific tactics.
Like what? Give me the good stuff.
Well, first, they emphasize using FDA-aligned materials.
Okay.
This means structuring your presentations and documents in a way that directly addresses the FDA's key concerns and expectations.
So don't try to reinvent the wheel. Use their language, their format, their style.
Exactly. It shows that you're on the same page, that you understand their priorities. They even mention regulatory templates, almost like a script to follow.
It's about taking away the guesswork, reducing the cognitive load so you can focus on the content.
Right. And of course, practice those talking points until they're second nature.
Yeah.
The more comfortable you are with the material, the more confident you'll appear in the meeting.
And confidence breeds trust, which, as we've established, is essential in this game.
Right.
Okay, and last but not least, Increasy throws in a suggestion that initially seemed a bit macabre.
Oh, do tell.
They encourage sharing your own spooky regulatory stories. You know those moments where everything went wrong? Those near misses, those lessons learned the hard way.
Oh, I actually love this.
Yeah.
It's about normalizing the challenges, acknowledging that everyone makes mistakes. It's also incredibly valuable from a learning perspective.
Exactly. It's like misery loves company, but in a productive way.
Yeah.
Knowing you're not alone in facing these challenges can be incredibly empowering.
Absolutely. And it shifts the perspective from why me
Yeah.
to, okay, this is a common hurdle. How can I learn from those who've cleared it before?
So it's not just about avoiding the scary stuff. It's about using those experiences to build resilience and expertise.
Precisely. And that brings us back to a key theme we've been touching on throughout these scenarios. Preparation.
Right. Because whether it's an FDA meeting, a guidance update, or a potential clinical hold, the more you anticipate and prepare, the less likely you are to be caught off guard.
Right. And that preparation seems to involve a lot of systems thinking.
Yeah.
Remember those curated alerts and internal wikis for CMC updates? Or that checklist for potential clinical hold issues?
It sounds like we're talking about moving beyond just reacting to fires.
Yes.
And instead building a whole defense system.
That's a great way to put it. Think of it like constructing a well-fortified castle.
Okay.
You need strong walls, clear lines of sight, well-trained guards, and a really good understanding of where the dragons might be lurking.
Okay. I'm loving this castle metaphor.
Yeah.
It's way more inspiring than just drowning in regulatory paperwork.
Exactly. We're not just victims here.
Right.
We're strategic defenders, building systems to protect ourselves and our projects from those regulatory fire-breathing dragons.
But even with the best defenses, sometimes things still go wrong.
Right.
Like that NDA or BLA submission scenario where you're missing crucial data at the 11th hour. What happens then?
That's when those strong relationships you've built with the FDA become absolutely critical.
So it's not just what you know, it's who you know.
It's both.
Okay.
You need the technical expertise and the strong relationships. But those relationships are built on trust, which you earn through consistent communication, clear documentation, and a demonstrated commitment to quality.
So it's about more than just checking boxes and meeting deadlines.
Right.
You're cultivating a whole culture of quality and collaboration both within your company and with the FDA.
Precisely. And that's where leadership plays a crucial role.
Okay.
Remember scenario 4 where the regulatory team was struggling to get resources?
Yeah.
Because leadership saw their work as just a roadblock.
Yeah, that's such a common problem.
It is.
So how do you get leadership on board with this more proactive, strategic approach to regulatory affairs?
By speaking their language.
Okay.
Show them how investing in regulatory expertise and systems can actually save time and money in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you avoid costly delays and setbacks, that translates directly to a healthier bottom line.
So it's about connecting the dots between regulatory compliance and business objectives.
Yes.
Showing how a strong regulatory strategy can be a competitive advantage, not just a cost center.
Exactly. And that brings us to a really important point. Regulatory affairs professionals need to be seen as strategic partners, not just administrative gatekeepers,
Yeah.
like that translator role we discussed earlier.
It's about bridging that gap between the highly technical world of CMC
Yes.
and the business world of timelines and budgets.
And that's why it's so important for regulatory professionals to develop strong communication and interpersonal skills.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to explain complex technical concepts in a clear and concise way.
Right, because you could have all the data in the world.
Yeah.
If you can't articulate it effectively, you're not going to get very far.
And that's why those mock FDA meetings are so valuable.
Yeah.
It's not just about rehearsing the content. It's about practicing your communication skills under pressure.
Okay.
Can you handle those curveball questions? Can you project confidence and competence even when you're feeling stressed?
It's like public speaking, but with higher stakes. So you need to hone those presentation skills and learn how to connect with your audience, even if that audience is a bunch of serious-faced FDA reviewers.
Exactly. And all this leads to a really interesting point made by Chrissy.
Okay, I'm all ears.
They argue that we should view the entire regulatory process not as a series of hurdles to overcome,
Right.
but as an opportunity to learn and grow.
I like that.
Yeah.
So instead of dreading those FDA meetings or guidance updates,
Right.
we should see them as chances to sharpen our skills and deepen our understanding of the regulatory landscape. It's almost like leveling up your regulatory game.
Exactly. And that brings us full circle to the power of those spooky regulatory stories we talked about earlier.
Because those stories aren't just about what went wrong.
Right.
They're about the strategies and skills that help people navigate those challenges successfully.
Right. It's about turning those scary stories into learning opportunities
Yeah.
and using those lessons to build a stronger, more resilient regulatory culture within your company.
Sure.
And that brings us to a really key idea, a shift in perspective that I think is essential for anyone working in this field.
Okay. Tell me more.
It's about learning to embrace the regulatory process.
Embrace. Really? It sounds a bit counterintuitive given all the stress and anxiety we've been talking about.
I know it might sound strange,
Yeah.
but what I mean is shifting our mindset from viewing the regulatory process as a necessary evil to seeing it as a valuable partner in achieving our goals.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
But honestly, right now, it feels a lot like battling a giant bureaucratic monster.
I hear you.
Yeah.
But what if we reframe that monster as a wise and experienced guardian,
Okay.
there to ensure that our products are safe, effective, and meet the highest quality standards?
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, that's what we all want, right?
Right.
Safe and effective treatments that improve people's lives.
That's a really powerful reframing.
It is.
So instead of trying to outsmart or circumvent the regulations, we should focus on understanding the rationale behind them and working within those parameters to achieve our objective.
Exactly. And that's where that deep knowledge of the regulations comes in.
Yeah.
The more you understand the why behind the rules,
Yeah.
the better equipped you'll be to navigate them effectively and even leverage them to your advantage.
So it's about moving beyond mere compliance to becoming a true regulatory strategist.
Precisely. And that strategic mindset can be incredibly empowering.
Okay.
It allows you to anticipate challenges, identify opportunities, and make informed decisions that ultimately benefit both your organization and the patients you serve.
Okay. I'm starting to see how embracing the regulatory process can actually lead to greater success and innovation,
Yes.
but it's definitely a mindset shift.
It is, and it requires a willingness to learn, adapt, and continuously improve
Uh-huh.
because the regulatory landscape is constantly evolving.
Right.
What worked yesterday might not work today, and that's why it's so important to stay informed.
Yeah.
Engage with the regulatory community and embrace those spooky stories as valuable learning opportunities.
So it's about continuous learning, collaboration, and a healthy dose of humility.
Absolutely.
Because none of us has all the answers, and the regulatory world is way too complex to navigate alone.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And that's why Increasy's suggestion of sharing those spooky regulatory stories is so powerful.
Right, because those stories help us normalize the challenges, learn from each other's mistakes, and build that sense of community and support you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. And they remind us that even the most experienced regulatory professionals have faced their fair share of spooky moments.
Right.
It's all part of the journey.
So instead of trying to hide our mistakes or pretend we have it all figured out, we should be open to sharing our experiences, both good and bad, so we can all learn and grow together.
Absolutely. And that's how we create a more resilient, collaborative, and ultimately successful regulatory ecosystem.
Okay, so for our listener who's maybe feeling a little overwhelmed by all this, what's that one key takeaway you'd leave them with?
I'd say don't let fear paralyze you.
Right.
The regulatory world can seem daunting, but knowledge is power.
Uh-huh.
And remember, you're not alone in this journey.
It's like that old saying, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Right.
But easier said than done when you're staring down an FDA submission deadline.
Absolutely. Fear can lead to inaction,
Right.
to missed opportunities.
Yeah.
But when you approach the regulatory process with curiosity, a willingness to learn,
Okay.
and a focus on building those strong relationships, it becomes much less intimidating.
So it's about shifting our perspective from fear to curiosity.
Yes.
From seeing the regulatory process as an obstacle to viewing it as an opportunity for growth and innovation.
Precisely. And that's where those spooky regulatory stories become so valuable.
Yeah.
They remind us that even the most seasoned professionals have faced their share of challenges.
Uh-huh.
It's all part of the process.
And by sharing those stories, we can normalize the bumps in the road, learn from each other's mistakes, and build that sense of community that makes the journey less daunting.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, we're all working toward the same goal,
Yeah.
developing safe and effective treatments that improve people's lives.
Well said, and I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah?
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the sometimes terrifying but ultimately fascinating world of regulatory affairs.
It's been a pleasure.
And to our listener, we hope this conversation has left you feeling a bit more prepared, a bit more empowered, and maybe even a little bit excited to tackle those regulatory challenges head on. Remember, knowledge is your shield, curiosity is your compass, and collaboration is your secret weapon. So go forth and conquer those regulatory nightmares.